Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar today for LiGO for Lucity, a new view of operations. This is Elizabeth Marshall, CEO of Marshall GIS. We've got Rhett Harmon here as well, and Terry Bartlett. And they're gonna come on a little bit later as we do the demo. So if you could mute your phone, it'll keep it a little bit quieter for other folks. And then if you haven't used WebEx before, you can select full screen. So we're just going to go over, do an overview of LiGO and how we can integrate some of the data from LiGO into Lucity, and then do a demonstration. So if you haven't used WebEx before, you just select View from the menu bar there and select full screen. So we're going to approach this a little bit differently, look at form and talk about how form follows function. And certainly with footwear, you're familiar with different functions and different footwear. You wouldn't go running in a hiking boot usually. If there's a bear attacking you, possibly. But it applies to these two systems that we're going to talk about as well. One, LiGO is for fast, time series, repetitive data. It's a system that has value in and of itself. And then highly functional analytical database that you have at Lucity, which includes GIS data for understanding some of your operations, looking at metrics, pulling reports, and things like that. So today we're going to talk about how taking some of this time series data in the database in LiGO, which is a telematics or GPS or AVL system, and Lucity, and how that can improve your operations. So just go over a couple elements of LiGO. There's vehicles, but these are vehicles or your crews or cell phones or maybe even just high-value generators that you have. We track those. As they move, we record and keep the tracks of those resources. There's the concept of events, many different sorts of events from speeding to plow down events. And these are some of the data that can be pushed automatically into systems like Lucity. And then there's reporting, and reporting is very ad hoc, and you can export data using reporting to push into other systems as well. Lastly, there's the concept of jobs and being able to create new and dispatch jobs. So that's a LiGO flyover. To show you a little bit about the time series value of LiGO, we can do things like proof of presence and say, was anybody at this address this last month, and do a query and show all those vehicles that maybe were in that area, and pick the vehicle that was in that area and show the tracks for that day in the past. And this is an example of looking at and keeping this historical data and having very simple to use queries to look into that time series data. So again, in terms of form follows function, this functionality is historical data looking into the past, and the LiGO solution works well for that. Let me get to the next one. A quick overview of LiGO. We're pulling GPS data into devices, whether they're telematics CalAmp devices or cell phones. We actually process some of the data in the telematics devices and with firmware. Push that data we use Verizon, since they're the largest, most reliable network in the lower 48. Also, I guess the U.S. in general. We use them, very cheap, very inexpensive data plans that we have that we can push this data into LiGO in the cloud, and you can access that anywhere. Another way to look at this system is to look at it as a platform as a service. You've probably heard of software as a service, but LiGO really is a platform as a service and allows you to pull data into its architecture and push data out in a standardized way. We see two exciting areas of growth in this market. One is all the different sorts of sensors we can start to pick up and pull into LiGO, whether it's temperature, heck, it could be your temperature, or the temperature of the back of the truck, or the temperature of the pavement, proximity data, all sorts of different sensors pushing into LiGO, and being able to push that data out in a standardized way. And the other is being able to push elements of the data in LiGO into mission-critical applications that you use every day, like Lucity or your Esri GIS system. So a word about tracking. Tracking is very important. So the more accurate your tracking, the better your overall results. You know, the data that you push out into other systems is going to be. So what we've done is we've actually programmed into our mobile devices the ability to push a point only when something interesting happens, like the vehicle turns a certain angle, goes a certain distance, has a certain deceleration or acceleration, or engine on, engine off. So we don't do every 10 seconds or 30 seconds or 2 minutes. We really just push the data when there's something of value going on. With those two things, we're not fire hosing the data up into LiGO. We're not creating a big processing issue of processing through data that's really of no value. We also keep our data plans down, and they're exceedingly inexpensive in terms of providing that connectivity to our mobile devices. But probably most important is we have really accurate tracking, which is important when we start to overlay features on GIS systems and things like that. So a little bit about events. So we can, this feels like sky's the limit on what sort of events you can start to program and say, this is meaningful to my business. In this case, I think this is a street sweeper with just when the sweeper is down is being recorded and tracked. And across the U.S., there's these NPDES stormwater permitting requirements that are done in a very manual way right now. That entire process can be fully automated if we are able to identify just those elements where the plow is down, the sweeper's down, and be able to record that into our system that we use for reporting NPDES, say Lucity system. Another kind of event, just to give you two examples, is point events. So these are points that are known locations. In this case, we're looking at the city of Boise, and these are their mail stops. Every time we stop at this point location, we have an event of a certain duration, a crew that's been in that area for so long. And that's a kind of event data that we can then push to other systems. And perhaps that would be a work order or a job. So the data flow, we have continuous data coming from big rigs, from people, showing which crews are working, to vehicles that really don't have a normal engine, to things that have no engine at all that may be of value. And those are all being stored in LiGO in the cloud. A piece of that data can be processed and pushed to Lucity, maybe in the GIS view, maybe changing condition of a feature in my GIS, or we can change certain fields that are sitting, in this case, work order and number of hours at a spot can be updated from LiGO. And this is a Lucity work order down here. And this is where things get really interesting because we can start to do some of this work when it's set up with no human intervention. So there's no typing, there's no fingers involved. So for many years, a lot of years, seemingly 20 years, we've been doing integration between enterprise asset management systems like Lucity and GIS and with mobile devices. And we had this product called GeoConnect Server that took data from the field and pushed it into Lucity and GIS systems. So we really have just renamed this product to LiGO Server now to take these LiGO data feeds, do quality control of the data, do post-processing of the data, create configurable tools that allow me to take LiGO data and push it in to my mission-critical database system, pieces of it, pushing it into my mission-critical database system. So this is a component that sits on-premise on your site and acts as a traffic cop. with your data. So at a very simple level, any ArcGIS server app out there that you've got running with your Lucity system, we check a box, and boom, you've got vehicles showing on your Lucity map. It's that simple. At a more advanced level, we can actually configure and create a more custom solution that creates an automatic reporting from Lucity of your stormwater requirements based on everywhere my brush was down and in which region. So that's one scale to the other, very simple, vehicles on a Lucity map, and a lot of people like to start there and just get a lot of value just knowing where folks are, all the way to, population of data that you're using in your GIS and your Lucity work orders or inspections and things like that. So that's an overview of LiGO. And I'm going to hand it off to Rhett and Terry to show you a couple examples of how LiGO works.
So anyway, we'll zoom to the Parks and Rec. So what I did here is I changed views. We have a number of different fleets up here. So we've got Parks and Rec fleets. We've got the plow trucks. We've got some other general users, which were mail stop users, which I was going to show. And so we'll go to my Parks and Rec vehicles. We can see this vehicle here. And I've got up here show trace. So it is on and doesn't look to be moving right now, but it's live. We can go and see where this vehicle was, its tracks it went today. So I can zoom to today's tracks. This is showing the tracks where this vehicle went today. You can see here it's been to a number of different locations. These little circles with numbers in them show stops that they have stopped at. So we can see there was a stop here for 1 hour and 44 minutes. We stopped over here for 4 minutes. There were 2 stops within this particular area, which was for 46 minutes. And so we can sort of look at the day's activities for that particular vehicle. We also can, as I mentioned before, we're capturing all this information in the LiGO cloud. So we can go sort of look at the historical information that we're capturing as well. So I'm going to go back, starting looking at the 17th. We can go back as far as we have data for and query that. So for this particular vehicle or this particular crew, we can see today they've gone 22 miles. Yesterday they went 25. The day before they went 52 miles, drove, and then 47, 69. But you get an idea of the different miles that they've driven throughout their day. So you may want to go look at this 69-mile one just because it looks a little out of the ordinary, and we can draw those tracks for the day. So once again, we can see a lot more miles, a lot more activity for where they drove to. They were out here for 37 minutes. We may want to just go take a look at this one, and we can zoom to our satellite image and sort of see where they stopped at. And it looks like they were stopped at the pool, and we're doing some sort of maintenance activities at this particular pool. So Elizabeth talked about capturing information at point locations, so you can sort of track information at locations, and I'll show that one here. So this is one of the things we can do is go to sort of points of interest, Elizabeth had showed, and turn on these different stops that we have, show labels, and go back to our map, zoom out a little bit. And we can now see these different labels that we have here on the map. And if I turn off my actual labels themselves and go back to the map, we can see these different point locations that we have here. So we can start to track time at those different locations, whatever those be. Those are point-based locations. So here, these were actually mail delivery people, crews. We can see this particular crew was from today, actually, what they did today. So they were at this particular fire station number 1. They got there at 9:33. They left at 9:34, so they were there for 1 minute. These are all stops that are being captured through the M2M technology, so it doesn't require anybody to hand capture any information in there, just recording all those stops. And if you were capturing that information in work orders, they could go to a work order. We also, I'm going to turn off these points of interest. We also are capturing, we have some geofences set up and with different parks. And so I'm going to turn on my parks so we can see all these different geofences and go back to my map.
Global view there.
View of this, sorry.
Where in the world?
So these are these different parks that I have captured, and we'll capture. We can do the same thing as we did with points, locations, and so we're capturing actual time inside the park. So this is, once again, a pilot project we've got going with the city of Boise. They really had no metrics in history of how much time their field crews are spending in these different parks. So now they're being able to capture metrics of all these different crews and how much time they're spending in these parks, and they'll soon add those up at the end of the week, the month, the year, and find out actually how much resources they're spending in each one of these individual parks. Before I leave this data set here, I'm going to show up another report. This is an interesting report. It's called a trip and idle report. So it shows the start time and end time for your crews when they left the yard or the office, when they returned back, the miles they did. But I think one of the cool things that this report is shows their sort of this idle time. So idle time is sort of the time at their stops. We're going to assume at this point in time that the idle time is their actually working time versus not time. So this crew here, you can see this is last week, about 80% of their time was stop time, hopefully working time. This one was much lower at 60%, so 40% of their time was driving during the day and 60% was stop. So you get a quick snapshot of your crews and see how much time they're driving versus being idle. I'm going to switch to a different data set here, and we're going to look at another type of activity, and this is linear activities, which are much harder to capture in any other sort of work order system or paper-based system. So one of the counties we've been working with, they're trying to capture it on paper, so they have a report with every street segment that they're trying to capture sweeping and plowing on, and you can imagine the size of that report, paper report. And then we have I've talked to another customer who somebody has some Trimble units they're trying to start and stop every time a street sweeper does a street sweeping segment. So these are street sweepers, linear events. Over here we can see we have a geofence here. This is their dump zone. And so we can go take a look at, this is the dump zone report. They're tracking time once again in the dump zone. Gordon, the operations manager, wants to keep his dump zone time for under an hour. We can see that Jerry here is 4 stops for an hour and 20 minutes. So he's a little bit over, and we can see that Stan is a little bit over as well. The interesting thing I noticed is this is from yesterday. They were both in there at the same time at about 10 a.m., and they were both there for 30 minutes. So they were probably having a pop and gabbing inside the dump zone there. So, so we can zoom into these individual tracks here, and I think Elizabeth showed some PowerPoint of this, so I'm not going to sort of spend too much time, but we can see the individual sweeping tracks. Once again, that dump zone report, Gordon, the operations manager, gets these reports emailed to him every day. So every morning he gets his dump zone report, and this is just a Gmail that I've got set up, so it comes in. So every morning that Gordon shows up in his office, he has a dump zone report, a wash zone report, and moving on. So the other thing we can show here is this combined sweeping report. So this is just showing the sweeping events that we were just talking about and showing in there the individual events. You can show we're capturing the distance and the speed, which is important for all sweeping events. So not only we can have a map to show individual or map to show what was planned to be swept. Now we're actually capturing what's being swept.
And this is the kind of data that can push into, a daily closed work order in Lucity, for example. So we're giving you different views of things going on in the field, which could be processed to push into Lucity as a closed event, like a work order or inspection. We get a lot of great feedback with these polls, understanding what our customers want.
Okay, so I'm going to show 3 main things today. So I'm going to be showing 3 things. One is just the configuration side of setting up the map service. The second thing I'm going to show is actually seeing vehicles within the Lucity web map in the GIS in Lucity. And then second is the idea of the integration that Elizabeth and Terry talked about within Lucity itself. So where I am right now is within the Lucity administration section under GIS. It's very simple. Essentially, you set up a map service and you connect that up to a vehicle map service. So we can essentially from LiGO, we can feed vehicles into a map service, and then you just add that vehicle map service within the Lucity configuration, and then you have live vehicles within your Lucity web map. And let's go. Oops, that's the wrong. Let me bring up Lucity here. So this is the Lucity web interface. So we have some work orders here, and the concept could be inspections, work orders, work requests, and you want to locate those, of course, on the map. And this work order is actually in the center here. It's a red, unfortunately, we've got red hydrants, but there's a red pin where that work order is located. And real quick, just from this view, I can see there's one vehicle here that's in the right corner. I'm going to just zoom in a little closer here to get a better view. So this is a Crew 2 vehicle down in this location, and here's my work order. Again, that could be a service request, so I'm a customer service. I'm taking a service call at a location. So having those vehicles in my map and seeing my activities that I'm working on helps with efficiency in terms of assigning that to the correct crew and those sort of things. And again, it's just a simple vehicle. So if you notice, if I turn off my vehicle here, I can just turn the vehicle off, and it's down here in the lower right. Again, it's just another map layer in my list that I can turn off. I can also do things such as filtering by my vehicles as well. So if I have that map service and I have layers such as different operations identified as maybe my utility vehicles versus my street sweeping vehicles, I can filter by those and then just show those specific vehicle types also by running this spatial filter here. So again, there's a variety of ways that you can utilize the Lucity web map in your vehicles to be a more efficient with that. So the last thing I wanted to show was the Lucity, within the Lucity interface here itself, with both the assets and work orders or work management. So one thing is, obviously, we're talking about vehicles here, and you have a fleet module within Lucity. So within that fleet module, there's a lot of information that can be captured on, for example, maintenance. There's a whole maintenance module within the LiGO where you can keep track and automatically set up based on odometer, when vehicles need tire rotations, when they need oil changes, and those could be associated with work orders. So completing those work orders or receiving the odometer reading automatically. Things such as a travel log. So there's a travel log within the fleet. There's all this information that's automatically captured with LiGO, such as your start odometer and end odometer, as well as start time, date. And we have all that information in terms of the actual vehicle itself, and also we can keep track of the driver. So one of our customers, Sound Transit, is actually, they have an ID that they can scan, and it keeps track of who's driving the vehicle, and then so that keeps track of the drivers as well as the vehicle itself. And so that's kind of it. I was going to show, I know we're running out of time, but the same thing with parks that Terry mentioned earlier, that when you drive into parks and there's a geofence, you're driving in there and you can keep track of, again, that time that you're spending at the park, and you may have work orders or inspections. Those sort of things can also be captured as an example of another type of asset.
So form follows function. Some of this data that we're collecting we can consolidate and put into Lucity, and the combination gives you new information and new views into operations that you didn't have before. And just note that Rhett's going to be at the Lucity conference, so please stop by in Kansas City if you're there, and stop by and say hello to Rhett and follow up with some you might have. But that's what we have for today, and I think we're
Right on time.
right on time. Thanks for your patience. This is the first time we did polling. Thanks for your patience on that. And please feel free to follow up if you have any questions or comments. Probably Red or Terry will follow up with you by email as well. Thanks so much, you guys, and have a great day.
Thank you.